And it's the pre-show, everybody. It's the 220, no, it's the SY0-601 Security Plus study group. Well, where was I going? I was wanting to do an A+. Let's do an A+ study group. No, we're not. We're doing Security Plus today. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here in the pre-show. We got about 10 minutes before we get started. 9 minutes and 30 seconds. I am just getting kind of acclimated here. Just got the earbuds on. This can go over here. I need to pop the chat out so I could see the chat room. Hey, chat room. Oh, that's bright. Let's bring this down right there. Let's pull our chat up. This needs to be on this side. Boom. This needs to be on this side. Boom. There you go. Fantastic. I think we're in pretty good shape there. Laptop is up and running. Hopefully not flickering. I think it's a loose connection. I think it's a loose cable. I think I've managed to tighten it down, but if not, I'll be doing a lot more work over the next couple weeks for all of that. Hey, chat room. Good to see ya. There's Ashburn. There is Missouri. We've got the Philippines checking in. Washington is here. Or it could be Washington. It could be one or both of those. We'll have to see. We will have to see. ETL says, pass both A+ tests and Network Plus in 4 weeks of study. That's an aggressive schedule to be doing that. Congratulations. There's Wisconsin and Oregon and Wisconsin again. A lot of Wisconsin. Montgomery, good to have you here. Hello, Florida. The Florida connections are here. Haiti, Germany, Los Angeles, California. Hello, Liverpool. Hello, Australia. It's late again. You're back for more, I guess. Hello, West Coast. Gig Harbor. What is a Gig Harbor? I'm not familiar. There's a place I'm not familiar with. I need to know more. Indiana, Detroit, Huntsville, Alabama. Welcome. Wisconsin. The Wisconsin-Illinois border, actually. There's Arizona and Kansas City and New Zealand. You folks in New Zealand and Australia checking in on the live stream from the middle of the night. Thank you for being here. Although thank you for being here, everybody. To even be on a live stream is so nice to have you here. And the Security Plus is always so much fun. Hello, South Carolina. Gig Harbor, Washington, near Tacoma. See? Now I've learned something. Now I have something to Google when we're done. Hello, Dallas and New York and Kansas City and Chandler and Charlotte and Kentucky and Edmonton. It's getting cool in Edmonton now. I have family in Edmonton, so I was looking at the weather, and it's chilling down pretty nicely already. Now, I say that it's all relative to Florida, but to us, if it gets below 70 Fahrenheit, we're freezing. So that's just the way it works. Lincoln, New Brunswick, Canada, welcome. South Texas, Charlotte, Oklahoma, Massachusetts, welcome. Good to have everybody here. Let's do a quick check and make sure that everything here is working. All my cameras are up. We're recording over here. We are recording down here. That's good. I've already done the podcast intro. That's good. The geese are flocking soon. I think that means something. Sounds bad. But I think that's a normal thing, isn't it? We've got Brooklyn, Bangalore, India, Lake Worth. I was just in Lake Worth. Did I say this in the last live stream? I was just in the Palm Beach, Lake Worth, Delray area about a week ago. Virginia Beach. I guess it was 2 weeks ago. Now that I'm thinking about it, New York is here. Riverside is here. Santa Clarita, welcome. Maryland, St. Vincent, D.C., welcome. Baltimore, St. Lucia, Sacramento. A lot of folks hanging out on the 601 study group. Maureen says, took the 601 after the last August study group session and passed. Congratulations. And thank you for your support of the notes, the practice exams, the videos, and the voucher. You're my favorite person. You're just, that is tremendous support. So I appreciate that. Every bit of it. And all of you could do exactly what Maureen did. You all need the notes. You all need the Q&A. Watch the videos. Buy the voucher on the Professor Messer website. When do the CompTIA A+ exams renew? Well, it's different than retire. So I guess there'll be a new set of A+ exams sometime the beginning of next year. And then they will retire the existing ones about usually 6 months after that. Sometimes more. It depends. I don't know what they're doing timing-wise. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how that works. We never know until we know. They're still working on things. You know, there's a lot up in the air with A+, I think. I think they've got to work on, do they stick with Windows 10? Now Windows 11 is sort of out. So do you put Windows 11? This is the whole problem with A+ and having those operating systems is they tend, for some reason, they tend to plan releases of the A+ exam that seem to match up with releases of Windows. and that just creates so many problems because you don't want to release a set of certification exams and not have the latest stuff. So they'll figure it out. I think they may put in enough time they can put Windows 11 in there, which would be fun. Really, it's just Windows 10 with just a little bit of a UI change. There's obviously new features and probably worth talking about. But anyway, I think Windows 11 should be out long enough that by the time they're planning to do this, they will be able to implement it into the exam objectives. That's my hope anyway. Otherwise, I get a lot of questions about it. Let me check cameras. I think we're in pretty good shape. Let me make sure this is where it should be. That looks good on the screen. Presentation is good here. We got about 3 minutes there, everybody. We'll get things going. Oh, you do not need a movie or a biography about my life. Here I am playing Xbox. And here I am playing some more Xbox. Were I able to fix the technical issues? I believe I was. I believe it was a loose cable. I believe I have tightened it up. But of course, these things, when you're dealing with thermal issues, with things getting warmer, cooling down, getting warmer, cooling down, there's always a chance it will come loose again in the middle of this. For hours yesterday, no, day before yesterday, for hours on Tuesday, I left this running and saw no flickers whatsoever. Of course, that just means it's going to start up as soon as we go live. That's how it always works. But I think I've got it narrowed down. Zoom in a bit more on the question screen. Like here? Does that help? Does that help a little bit? That's a little too close, isn't it? That's okay. There you go. We'll get there. Don't worry. But this is not This is not the actual study group, by the way. This is just me making sure that the cameras are working. This is me chatting with folks in the chat room. So that's it. But this should be interesting. Now, what I talk about a lot in the study groups, Kendra, the path I took to get into IT and what I did was there. But I really haven't done any videos or anything on that. That just seems a little self-serving. Is this a weekly thing? It's a monthly thing. Although we tend to do live streams once a week, this month we've crammed them into 2 weeks. I have craziness going on in my life right now. So it's not too crazy. It's just very busy. It's not chaotic. It's just a lot of things to organize that are going on right now. So I've crammed the live streams into the last 2 weeks. So we're going to go next week and the week after probably won't have a live stream, but then we'll pick up in October and do them once a week again. My Xbox game right now does not have one. It's turned off. I have to finish Network Plus first or everybody will be angry with me. So once I get back on Xbox, I want to see what some of the new things are with Division 2. It's hard to stay away from Elite Dangerous, things like that. I just have I haven't even checked out the latest games on Xbox. I got to work on that. I will get there. We've got about 30 seconds to go and get things going. A lot more folks checking in from Dallas and France and elsewhere. We sure appreciate you being here. We got a lot to go through. Plenty of Q&A. Am I planning to do a CASP? CASP is on my list, but it's not high up on my list. It's sort of lower down on the list. Switch is pretty good, and I do have a switch in the other room. and I haven't picked that one up in a while. It's a shame that I've got all this power just sitting there. And Xbox Game Pass, I agree, Dino, is amazing. It's top of the hour. It's time to get a live stream going. Let's see if I can find my keynote. There it is. Let's see if my keynote will give me a green light. It's way over here. I need to pull this over to me. Did get a green light. We got a play button. We're ready to go, everybody. Let's do a live stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the September 2021 Professor Messer SY0-601 Security Plus Study Group. We've got so many things to go through today. We're going to spend this first hour with me asking you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives for the SY0-601 Security Plus. And then in the second hour, I'll open up phone lines. We'll take questions from the chat room. I'll answer questions like the ones that were posed to me in the pre-show, wondering what's next, what's new, what's going on. We'll talk all about that. For this first hour, though, I want you answering the questions that I am asking. And the way you can do that is to follow along. If you are here live, you can pop open a new browser window and go to this link, professormesser.com/QA. That's where you want to go. That will move you over to our Socrative question. And the question's just sitting there waiting for you, by the way. So that would be a good thing to have a look at. You could also, if you would like the app that this runs from, it's the Socrative Student app. You can get that on your favorite app store, wherever that happens to be. It will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. So you can find all of those on there. It's one of those scenarios where you can do either one of those. You just make it, sit it on that screen, and I will change the questions as we go. Now, if you've done all of that correctly, there will be a question waiting there that says, which of the following would be categorized as OSINT? Is it an annual financial report, a file of password hashes, ISO 27701, a DNS sinkhole address, or an SSH login without a password? Now, if you think you know the answer, you would want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. As always, please, no answers in the chat room, no hints in the chat room. We will come back to this question in just a moment. That's a question, by the way, from last month. We always do one question from last month to kind of get us started to see if we really know what's going on. Thank you for being here. We would not be able to do these live streams without you. When we are somewhere else, when we are not doing a live stream, you can, of course, always go to the Professor Messer website to see what's going on. You can find out about that at professormesser.com/Twitter and professormesser.com/Instagram to be able to see our weekly Security Plus question. And, of course, there's new videos coming out all the time. I'd love it if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Visit professormesser.com/YouTube. Or if you like this video, simply click that thumbs up button. And that will tell you, indeed, this was something you were really happy about, that you really liked. Well, today we're going to talk about the SY0-601. That is the version of the exam that you would take to be able to earn your Security Plus certification. It is a single exam. It was released on November the 12th of 2020, so this is relatively new. We're coming up on not even a year old on this particular certification, which means the estimated retirement for the SY0-601 is May of 2024. So if you are studying for your Security Plus right now in September of 2021, you've got plenty of time. Keep doing that. So make sure that you are studying, that you work on that 601. Now, if you are in a country that is not English speaking, you can still take the 501 right now. But for pretty much everyone who is watching this, the SY0-601 is going to be your exam. A single exam, 90 minutes long, a maximum of 90 questions. You might get fewer than 90 questions. The passing score is on a scale between 100 and 900, and you have to score a whopping 750. That's a pretty big number that you would have to get. So you have to be ready when you walk into these exams, because you're going to get multiple choice questions, performance-based questions, all kinds of different things thrown at you. Make sure you are ready. We'll do all of these types of questions in this study group today. Also, make sure you have the objectives. You'll find it at the link on your screen, professormesser.com/objectives. I'll also notice folks in the chat room that are here. Raven has found the super chat. Thank you for the $5 donation. I really do appreciate the support we get from purchasing our course notes, our practice exams, and the Super Chats as well. When we love to do these live streams and have you there. Alan on the Super Chat says $19.99 donation. Thank you very much for that Super Chat as well. And you don't even have a question in there. We'll do some questions. I'll put you at the top of the list when we get to the Q&A. I appreciate that Super Chat very, very much. Let's also tell you about, on the website, all of my videos are available for you to watch for free. You don't have to pay for any videos. You can simply go to YouTube or go to my website, click on the video, and watch it. There's no registration. You don't have to join any type of streaming service. There's no monthly subscription. You just click and watch. That's what it's about. That's the goal. That is our primary objective at Messer Studios, is to create these courses and put them out there for free. Now, I realize a number of you would like to be able to have offline versions of these videos, perhaps an MP3 audio-only version, maybe a copy of my course notes, maybe a copy of my practice exams, maybe a copy of my exam hacks ebook. Maybe you would like some preferred access to the Q&A that we do in our next hour. You can get all of that by purchasing my Success Bundle. You can find out more about that at ProfessorMesser.com/601 SB. I've also got free Q&A on my site, the Take 10 Challenge. I have 601 questions, just like I told you last month that I would get those 601 questions up, and they are there. So there are some 601 Take 10 challenges available at ProfessorMesser.com/Take10, where you will get questions that are archives of these study groups that I have in an online Q&A, 10 questions blocks. It's something you can do for both A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus. Both of those. There's 3 of those things. There's also audio-only versions of this available in a podcast format. If you want to get a replay, go to ProfessorMesser.com/podcast, and you can add to your podcast listening program my A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus study groups. They're all there. So that's one of those situations where sometimes people like to watch the video replay. That's on YouTube. It's on my website as well. Or some people like an audio-only version you can listen to when you're traveling, listen to when you're commuting, listen to when you're working out. Those are all available at ProfessorMesser.com/podcast. Also, you'll notice that my marketing manager, Lori, is adding timestamps to all of the YouTube video descriptions for these study groups. So you can go to any of these study groups and simply click on the time to be able to find a particular question, a particular caller, and listen to all of those. So everything is there at ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube. For those of you that have followed us through the years, you know that we have a 24/7 chat available. Used to be on our website. Now I've moved us to Discord, which has been just tremendous. So go to Discord at ProfessorMesser.com/Discord. You can join our Discord server, and we're out there all the time. So if I'm not live, you can always go back to the Discord server and see what's going on with us when we are offline. I guess sort of online, because I am on the Discord server. I usually will sit here and write and create content, and Discord is usually up and running there as well. Now, if you're working on your Security Plus, you're ready to take that exam, then you can certainly go to the CompTIA website, which is really the Pearson VUE website, and pay full price for that exam. But why would you pay full price? Why wouldn't you save some money by going to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers? The vouchers that are there don't require any special coupon codes. You don't have to perform any particular functions or do anything special. They're just automatically discounted. So if you are at Pearson VUE and noticing those prices are full price, then you probably want to go over to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers and get the vouchers there, because they will cost you less. Those vouchers are good for about a year, minus a couple days, because I'll buy them up, and then as you purchase them, I'll send them out to you. But if you buy them from my site, you will also get a copy of my Exam Hacks ebook, which is normally only available if you get my Success Bundle. So this is just a bonus I thought I would throw in, because you're obviously taking the exam, you're buying a voucher. It would be good if you had some tips and tricks that can help you get through that exam and score the best possible score you can get. That is definitely my Exam Hacks ebook. You can find it all at ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. Let's now go back to that question we asked earlier. Which of the following would be categorized as OSINT? Would it be an annual financial report, a file of password hashes, ISO 27701, DNS sinkhole address, or an SSH login without a password. All of these are good things. All of these are useful things to also have, but the problem you're going to run into is only one of them are OSINT. I guess it would help to know what OSINT is. OSINT is open source intelligence. OSINT is one of those where you need to be able to gather information from a site. Well, where would you start gathering information? Well, you could go to publicly available sources like the internet, discussion groups, chat rooms like this one, being able to make sure all of those are available. One of the other things you could do is find some government data. Government data is often open source and available for everybody to look at. And there's also companies that will publish information themselves, things like financial reports, databases, other things that are publicly available. So if we look through the list of all of these OSINT results, you can see 54% of you say that is an annual financial report. That's what would be categorized as OSINT. And based on what we just learned, that's the right answer as well. File of password hashes is useful if you're trying to do some hacking, but they are not usually publicly available. You never want your password hashes to be publicly available as open source intelligence. If they are, you probably should be changing your passwords right now. ISO 27701 is a standard, so that has nothing to do with open source intelligence. A DNS sinkhole address, usually you would configure in a firewall or proxy or some other type of security device, is also not open source information. It's not something other people should know. And lastly, SSH login without a password, a very useful thing to do. You can log in using your public and private keys, for example, and not have to put in a password. I do explain and demonstrate how to do that in the Security Plus course, but that is not open source intelligence. The only one on this list that really qualifies as open source intelligence is an annual financial report. If you answered A, you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Now, one of the things you'll notice on the actual Security Plus exam is that the first set of questions you get, usually the first handful of questions, around 5 or so, are questions that are not multiple choice. So the question we just had was a question, and there were multiple choices to choose from. Well, one of the things you'll find on all of the CompTIA exams is those first set of questions are not multiple choice. They are what CompTIA calls performance-based questions, which means they're just anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might put you at a command prompt and ask you to perform a function. They might put you at a Windows or Linux desktop and have you perform a function. They might be giving you a matching question, a drag and drop question. You get the idea. It could be anything. So what I like to do is our first new question of every study group, I have for you a performance-based question. So here is a matching question for you that asks, match the device to the description. And you'll notice I have 4 devices, but I have 7 descriptions, which means that some will be left over. Some of those descriptions you will not use, which makes this a little bit harder. So let's go through, for those listening on the podcast, the different devices are an NGFW, a jump server, an IPS, and an HSM. So here are the descriptions that I have that you should match to those 4 devices. The description A is access a secure network zone from an insecure network. Description B is perform web server requests on behalf of a client. Description C is to gather performance statistics on a network link. Description D is allow or deny traffic based on application type. Description E is block private information from traversing the network. Description F is store encryption keys in a secure appliance. And description G, block known application vulnerabilities. So we have these 4 devices. We have 7 different descriptions. So 3 of these descriptions we will not use. We will have descriptions for all 4 of those devices that we need to match up. And for bonus extra points, if you can tell me what or just in your mind, we will go through this, to tell me what the ones that are left over, what devices would you use for that? So this is sort of it's kind of a twofer. We've got a matching question at the beginning, and then sort of a fill-in-the-blank question afterwards. I just added to it. I added to your workload. Congratulations, you're welcome. That's one of those where you won't get a question like that on the exam, but you might get both styles of question on your exam. They don't tend to do fill-in-the-blank on the exam, though, thankfully. Most of the time, it's a matching, it's a drag and drop. I think instead of a fill-in-the-blank, they do a question like this where there will be some left over. So you can never do a one-to-one and match everything up, because it's possible in this question you could get them all wrong and never have an idea of what the right answer might be. So that's what they want to do, is make sure you understand these technologies and how they work. And notice I'm not asking you what these abbreviations mean. The abbreviations of the acronyms, understanding what the acronym words are, is not as important as understanding what you do with them. And this is a very common theme throughout all of the CompTIA exams. You will almost never get a trivia question. You almost will never get a question that is, what does IPS stand for? They aren't going to ask you that. What they will ask you is a question like this, where you have to understand, what do I do with that? How does that help me? So if this is a question where if you just want to put in 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, that's all you would have to put in. The important thing for you is to remember what answers you chose. So let's step through each one of these devices and see what description we would put in for that. Let's start with an NGFW, a device that up until, 15 years ago didn't exist. A relatively new technology in the world of IT security. An NGFW is a next-generation firewall, a technology I will tell you many people that I talked to did not believe even worked. I was, as a NGFW systems engineer, I was tasked with taking this brand new technology and explaining it to people, and they would look at me and say, this device doesn't do that. There's no way a device does that. It's impossible. Now it's just normal. We certainly think of it that way because a next-generation firewall doesn't care about port numbers or IP addresses. It can look at the application itself. And a next-generation firewall can allow or block applications, in some cases, even allow or block functions of an application. For example, you could create a next-generation firewall rule that said people are able to view information on Twitter. They can see anything they would like to on Twitter, but you can block them from posting on Twitter. That's the next-generation part of a next-generation firewall. If you answer D, allow or deny traffic based on application type, then you match that one up perfectly. Second on our list, a new technology for the SY0-601, a jump server. A jump server was not on the 501 exam, so relatively new. A jump server is used to access a secure network zone from an insecure network. Often, if you're working with a managed service provider or a security provider that's a third party, you will set up a jump server for them so they can securely connect to that jump server that's on the inside of your network, and from there they can jump to other devices that are inside of your network to be able to perform maintenance, to perform upgrades, to perform scans, to gather log information, whatever they need to be able to have that. So if you answered A, access a secure network zone from an insecure network, that matches with the jump server. Third on our list is an IPS, an intrusion prevention system. An IPS is a device that can monitor what type of traffic is going across the network, and if it sees anything in that traffic flow that is a known problem, it can block it. Usually we see the IPS functionality no longer in standalone devices. Instead, we've really put IPS functionality in our next generation firewalls. It's part of the next generation part of a next generation firewall. So an IPS, intrusion prevention system, will block known application vulnerabilities. So if you are in a position where you are maybe going through and trying to determine if there is a Microsoft vulnerability, a Linux vulnerability, we all are aware of this vulnerability. There's probably a signature in your IPS that can block that before it comes on to the inside of your network. So yes, next generation firewalls very commonly have intrusion prevention systems built into them. You do not need the secondary or separate standalone IPS if you have next generation firewall. Also, the last one on our list, an HSM. That's the television channel you would go to no, that's not it. Well, the HSM is a hardware security module where you would store encryption keys in a secure appliance. Answer F. So if you have especially a large data center, you have hundreds of web servers that you are allowing people to access from the internet, how do you manage all of those encryption keys? Because there's a key on every single one of those web servers. I need some way to manage them, to secure them, to make sure that nobody else can access those keys. And it's very common that we would use an HSM to be able to provide that functionality. So that's where you would find answer F, store encryption keys in a secure appliance. Well, that means we had some left over. We had answer B was left over, perform web server requests on behalf of a client. We had answer C left over, gather performance statistics on a network link. And we have E left over, block private information from traversing the network. So let's see if we can fill those in with what devices would work. So let's start with B, perform web server requests on behalf of a client. Well, it's the thing you threw out to put your next generation firewall in. It's a proxy. We're seeing a decreasing number of proxies. There are some proxy functions you might find in a next generation firewall, but proxies, generally speaking, are not very good ways to manage security. They're very slow. They're difficult to manage. Next generation firewalls have effectively replaced proxies for most environments. There are some cases where proxies are still important, especially for inbound access. Proxies are still incredibly important. For example, if you were accessing the ProfessorMesser.com website right now, you're actually jumping through a proxy to be able to do that for security reasons and to prevent anybody from denial of service. So a lot of things that we do to put those security devices in the front of our existing infrastructure. Pretty important. The next on our list is gather performance statistics on a network link. There are a number of different ways to gather performance statistics. I put in the list a collector. This could be SNMP. This could be NetFlow. This could be SFlow. There's a lot of different ways to gather performance statistics on a network link. I just broadly said collector because all of those things that I just mentioned are collecting the metrics and collecting the statistics. So very, very useful. And lastly on our list, block private information from traversing the network. What could we use to block private information? Private information would be your personal data, your social security number, your credit card number, your zip code, your address, or anything else. Well, that would be a data loss prevention device, a DLP. And again, DLP is something that could be a standalone appliance, especially for more advanced DLPs. But data loss prevention devices and data loss prevention capabilities are also often included in next generation firewalls. So a lot of the things that we know about data loss prevention, we are either doing in a standalone mode or just integrated into our existing next generation firewalls. That is the entire list. We have a next generation firewall, NGFW, that allows or denies traffic based on application type, a jump server that allows someone to access a secure network zone from an insecure network. This is not a DMZ, which is why you have a jump server. DMZ is for a completely different purpose. An IPS allows you to block known application vulnerabilities in that intrusion prevention system. An HSM stores encryption keys in a secure appliance, a hardware security module. We got a proxy that performs web server requests on behalf of a client. A collector gathers performance statistics on a network link. And DLP blocks private information from traversing the network. So this is where we really need to not only understand what these devices' names are. I guess it's important to know that an IPS is an intrusion prevention system. And in fact, if you know that, it might help you answer this question a little bit better. But as you can see, they really want you to know, what do these devices do? So if you don't recognize any of these, or you notice there are a lot more devices on the exam objectives. Make sure you understand all of them. Pretty nice and pretty important to have that there. Let's do another question. Now that we're done with our performance-based question of the month, let's do a multiple choice-based question. And the next question asks, which of the following would be the best way to add information to a Linux system log? Would that be grep, tail, DNS enum, TCP dump, or logger? These are all real things, by the way. None of those are made up. Those are all real things you should know from your exam objectives. And there's a lot more in your exam objectives. I just grabbed 5 of these. Which of the following would be the best way to add information to a Linux system log? Is it grep, tail, DNS enum, TCP dump, or logger? If you think you know the answer, lock in your answer with that link on the screen, professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to lock that in. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please no guesses in the chat room. We're going to pretend that we're sitting here and taking this exam, and we can't talk to anybody else. We can't write. No Googling. Do not Google. Do not reference the Google. So that's another one you should absolutely not do. Make sure you're not Googling. This, by the way, and a lot of the content that's in this study group, obviously, is from the SY0-601. So the SY0-601 exam added an amazing amount of content from the 501. So a lot of the questions you will see will be things you may have not seen before because they are new on the SY0-601 exam. This is pretty important. And if you are in this situation where you're trying to break out all of the different pieces, I always recommend people go to the exam objectives. So, of course, all of this is going to be there. Make sure you're able to find everything that is there. And you'll be able to figure it out once you go through the objectives. They make a great checklist to go through as well. Lock in your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA and lock it in. So I think if you are working through this question, it helps if you know what everything else is. So make sure that you do that. Make sure you go out to the exam objectives, that you go through every single one of the command lines. In fact, there were so many command lines that I had to break down that I had to create 2 separate videos. It was so big because I demonstrate every single one of these exam objectives. So all of this command line is demonstrated in the videos, and it's a challenge. So this is good. This is where we should focus. If you're someone who's working on this and you're trying to figure it out, this is where you should go. So let's see how well you did with this one. Let's go through this question one more time. This is, which of the following would be the best way to add information to a Linux system log? This is a very specific question, isn't it? Which one is the best way to do this? Let's see what you said. You said, we weren't quite sure. 52%, we did get a majority. 52% said logger is the way to do it. We also have 22% that say grep, G-R-E-P. Grep is what you would use. 10% said tail and 10% said TCP dump. So another one of these things that we need to know. Could a tie certainly for third. And then lastly, DNS enum, which doesn't sound like a real thing, but is a real thing. Well, let's step through this. Now, the question, of course, is we want to add something to a Linux system log. And the way that we would do that is sort of, it seems obvious, and yet you're wondering if it is obvious. It indeed is logger. Logger adds entries to the syslog on a Linux machine. You would use the syntax logger, and then in quotations, ideally, you would put what you want to add to the log that's there. Now, this is useful if you're doing something, if you're planning to maybe implement or make a change. You could have logger and then maybe put in there, we're about to make the change to the driver. And then you make the change to the driver, and then in logger you put that you made the change. The change is complete. And so that somebody else looking through the log can see exactly what you did and when by making that happen. So I don't think that we're really good at understanding the details of this until you step through it. So in my video, which is in section 4.1, the video is File Manipulation Tools. If you go through that, I demonstrate using Logger to see if you can get a better perspective of why you would use this and how it works. Pretty useful to have that there. There's a lot of other utilities that are in here. For example, 23% of you chose grep. Grep is used to search through a file to find information. So once somebody puts something into the log, if you now wanted to search through the log, maybe for their initials or their name, or maybe a topic at hand, you would use grep to very quickly find the lines that had that particular piece of text in them. You use grep all the time to look through logs that are in there. We've also got 9% of you said tail. Tail is used to view the last lines that are in a file. So if you know that the information you're looking for is probably in the last 10 lines of a log file, you could tail that particular log file name and it just shows you the last 10 lines. You can also specify a larger number of lines if you would like to. Lots of other options there to be able to work through. But that's another great utility, and both of those I use all the time, along with TCP dump. I'm an old school protocol analysis, packet gathering sniffer guy. So TCP dump is right there to be able to gather packets from the network connections and either view them on the screen or store them on a file so that you can maybe open them up later in a program like Wireshark, for example, to get a more detailed protocol decode. And DNS enum, you're enumerating information from a DNS server. 6% of you chose that one. Obviously not adding information to a Linux system log. The only one here that really provides that functionality is Answer eLogger, and 53% of you got that one absolutely right. Well done. Let's do another question. I've got another multiple choice question for you. This question asks, the Vice President of Sales is responsible for all customer relationship data. Which of the following would best describe this VP? Would the VP be a data custodian, a data owner, a data protection officer, a data controller, or a data processor? The Vice President of Sales is responsible for all customer relationship data. Which of the following would best describe this VP? Is it a data custodian, data owner, data protection officer, data controller, or data processor? If you think you know the answer, follow that link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. I can't point at it because it's overlaid on the screen. You lose my pointer if I do that. But that's it right there. That one, I'll go around it. professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. These are also effectively all real things. The data processor, controller, protection officer, owner, and custodian. They all start with data. That's the important part, of course, is knowing what you should do with all of that data. So make sure you're familiar with it. All of these, by the way, are things you should know for the exam. The 601 exam has broken this out a little bit better. The 501 exam has some things are a little bit better. They've kind of broken things out differently on the 601 to make it a little clearer for what we are looking to do. Maybe you can see that if you're familiar with the 501. A lot of us at this point have just jumped into the 601. We have no idea of the 501. I haven't even worried about that. Now that 601's been out for almost a year, it's now effectively become sort of the normal version that we think about. So that may be something to worry through as well. Let's see how you did with this one. This question asked, the Vice President of Sales is responsible for all customer relationship data. Which of the following would best describe this VP? Is this VP a data custodian, a data owner, a data protection officer, a data controller, or a data processor? We're not quite sure. 33% of us say that's the data owner. 28% of us say that's the data custodian. And 23% say it's the data controller. Interestingly enough, another double digit for 14% said data protection officer. So 4 of our questions, our answers, have double digits in them. We don't see that very often. 3% say a data processor. So let's talk about data responsibilities. Everybody has a different set of responsibilities to the data. And it's important that we understand what each person's responsibility is so you know where those lines of delineation are in the organization. If you're somebody who is collecting data from customers, like a vice president of sales is going to collect your name, your email address, your contact information. If you've ever gone to a website and said, I'm interested in this product, please contact me, that's the information that you're putting into a database. That will be the responsibility of that data will be probably an executive vice president of sales who will be in charge of making sure all of that data is there. Now, if you're in a different part of the organization, if you're in accounting, you might, or you're the treasurer, you might be responsible for financial information. If you're in engineering, you might be responsible for QA test data. So everybody has a different role to play, but this is the owner of the data. This is the person who owns that particular piece of information. So the data owner is the one who would be the vice president of sales who would own the customer data. And if you answered B, data owner, 33% of you, was not the majority, but it was the plurality for this question, did get this one right. Data owner is the right answer. Now, there are other data roles that you need to be aware of in your organization. For example, the controller of the data is the one that handles and understands the way that the data will be processed. So managing what you do with that data is a very different scenario, data controller. And that's the person, you can think of it's the one who controls what you do with the data. Owning the data is one thing. What you can do with it's something else, and it's the data controller that manages what you can do with that. The data processor, someone who is processing the data. Maybe we would hand that information off to a group within the organization that goes through all of our customer data to determine who bought a particular product or who would be the best people to contact who already own one of our products. They would process the data and provide us with the answers to that. Makes sense to me. Be able to work through that. And we have the payroll controller and processor would be a good example of this. So let's look at controllers and processors. The payroll department is the controller. They determine how the data is used. And then maybe you hand that off to a third party to be able to actually send out paychecks. That would be a data processor. Now, there's other data roles you have to know as well. Of course there is. There's the data custodian, sometimes referred to as the data steward. Somebody has to be responsible for what this data does as it sits on our network. How do we protect this data? How do we make sure nobody gains access to this data who does not have normal access to this data? Maybe they are the ones that put in the actual security controls to allow people to have access to that information. That is the person who is the steward of the data. They are the custodian of the data. We've put into their hands the responsibilities for making sure the data remains safe, and that would be the data custodian or data steward. And you'll notice in the 601, those are combined together because most often they usually are. Data protection officer, DPO, is probably the manager of the custodian, if you want to think of it that way. And that is someone who is absolutely setting data privacy rules. They're kind of given the high-level objective of what we do with our data, and they hand that off to the data custodian to say, make sure that it's following these rules that I set as the data protection officer. So that is why with all of these are all real things. The data custodian, the data protection officer, the data controller, and the data processor, all things you need to know about. They are all in your CompTIA exam videos, section 5.5. This is under the video I wrote for data roles and responsibilities. If you're still not familiar with that, have a look through all of those details. That will help you as well. I think that might help all of us. But we did hit 33% of you that answered B, data owner. And in this case, the vice president of sales is the owner of the data. Hopefully, we're getting the idea of data owner, data custodian, data protection officer. These are important titles, and almost everybody in the almost every organization is going to have someone responsible for this. Either that is their job, or it's an important part of what they do already. As you can probably tell, there is a lot of information in the 601, and it's all over the place. The 601 exam is a massive, massive exam. This is the largest CompTIA exam that I've ever put together. It is so huge compared to the previous version. They have dramatically increased the amount of objectives you need to know, and half of this exam is brand new. So if you're used to some of the things that were in older versions of the exam, you now have to effectively restudy on the 601 because it is enormous amounts of information. What I've tried to do is give you some feedback as to whether you might be ready to take this exam or not. So you need to have questions that have been written that give you the same feel or the same structure as the existing Security Plus exam. So I wrote a set of practice exams for this because I was not happy with what I saw on the internet. So you will, of course, need to have a look at this to be able to understand what's there. I'm going to show you some of these questions in a moment. This is a 380-page book, 90-question practice exams, 3 separate 90-question practice exams in this book. Let's do one of the questions now. Let me just show you what it looks like. This is the PDF version. Here's a question that asks, a system administrator, Daniel, is working on a contract that will specify a minimum required uptime for a set of internet-facing firewalls. Daniel needs to know how often the firewall hardware is expected to fail between repairs. Which of the following would best describe this information? Is it MTBF, RTO, MTTR, or MTTF? Now, this is a PDF, and I have a PDF editor here. If I wanted to use my little pen, I could mark different options here that is right in the PDF if I wanted to keep track as I went along. Or if you want to check after every question, I've made these on the side, either the quick answer where you just get A, B, C, D, or D, or the details, 56. You can see page 56. I don't want to jump and have to cycle through page 56 to be able to find this, so I can simply just click on where it says the details, and it jumps over to page 56, where it gives me the answer right here. You can see both the question is there, the possible answers, and it says the answer is A, MTBF. The MTBF, mean time between failures, is a prediction of how often a repairable system will fail. So this is a pretty good example of what you would find on the internet. There's a question, there's an answer, and in some cases, they will even tell you why that question was the correct one. But I never get it correct. I always answer the wrong thing. And I want to know why the wrong answer was wrong. So on every single question in this book, I not only give you the answer and I explain to you why the answer was right, I also give you all of the incorrect answers, and I explain why each incorrect answer was wrong. In fact, I think even if you get the question correct, I highly recommend that you read through the incorrect answers as well so that you understand why that question was incorrect. And I say that very strongly because there may be information on the exam that references information that was in one of these incorrect answers. It's almost like you're getting 4 times as much information on every single question than you would get from anywhere else on the internet. And then lastly, if you go through all those and you think, I have no idea what he's talking about, right here at the bottom is a QR code that links you to the video that the question is based on. So this video was from Objective 5.4, Business Impact Analysis. You can either type in the URL, you can click on the URL, it's a hyperlink inside the PDF, or you could right now, even as you're watching this video, bring up your phone, point the camera at that QR code, and simply visit the link on your phone. That helps if you have the physical book version. There are physical book versions of this as well that you could get with all these questions inside. And there's a QR code at the end of every single one of the answer pages. This is, and by the way, once you're done with this, you want to go to the next question, I'm going to click the back button in my PDF reader and I can go to the next question on my list. I'm back to where I started. That is my practice exams. I wrote these specifically for the SY0-601 exam. Every question is an original question that I wrote so that I could emulate or kind of steal the same voice that they, or try to steal the same voice they use on the exam, so that you will be at least familiar with the cadence and with the way that they use language on the exam. So it's more than just, do I know the content? Hopefully this is giving you a little bit of a feel of the way the actual exam questions are asked. We'll see if that stays that way throughout this 3-year run for these questions. That's my SY0-601 Security Plus Practice exams. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/securitype. Let's do some more questions. We've got plenty of more to go through. This question asks, a scan has identified a vulnerability on a Windows server, but the server has been previously patched for the vulnerability. Which of the following would best describe this result? Would that be a false negative, a credentialed scan, low severity, a false positive, or a non-intrusive scan? A scan has identified a vulnerability on a Windows server, but the server has been previously patched for the vulnerability. Which of the following would best describe this result? Is it false negative, credentialed scan, low severity, false positive, or non-intrusive scan? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See if you know what the answer is. And as always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Please don't do any of that in the chat room. Chat in the chat room. There's a lot of great chat going on in the chat room, but no answers, please. We'll pretend that we're trying to figure it out ourselves. And no Googling. Well, you can't really, it's hard to Google some of these because I write all of the questions in the study groups. They're all brand new questions I write every month. So you can go to last month. It's a completely different set of questions. And nobody's seen these questions except for me until now. So you can't find that question in there anyway to be able to work through it. Hopefully this is one you're familiar with. These technologies are all real things. I try not to put fake things in my answers. Sometimes I do, but I try not to be able to do this. This is one you should know. This is one that goes back to the 501, the 401. I want to say it goes back to the 301 exam. Does that help? I don't know that it helps or not. I don't know if that really does anything for you other than explain my knowledge of the historical perspective of the Security Plus certification, which doesn't help you at all. Oh, well, maybe it helps a little bit. We'll see. Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Let's see how you did with this one. A scan has identified a vulnerability on a Windows server, but the server has been previously patched for the vulnerability. Which of the following would best describe this result? Is it a false negative, a credentialed scan, a low severity, a false positive, or a non-intrusive scan? 76% of you say that's a false positive. Only 10% said it's a false negative. We're going to have to look at those, aren't we? 8% said a credentialed scan, 3% said non-intrusive, and 2% said low severity. So what would it be? What are we dealing with? What are we having to work through? Those of you that answered D, false positive, I hate to tell you, you're correct. That is the right answer. It is one of these situations where a vulnerability has been identified. You got an alert. You got a message. It's in a log. It says, here's absolutely the thing that is going on. And it turns out none of that's real at all. None of those things really happened. It doesn't exist. There's not a vulnerability. There's not anything that you should alert on. Nothing there makes any sense. This is sort of a common thing. For those of you in IT security, you know that false positives are a normal thing. This is what we do all the time. Because we're doing so many logs and so many scans, and we want our scans to identify things that aren't quite right. Well, sometimes things normal are not quite right. Things that are perfectly reasonable are not quite right, and sometimes it tells you about that. Or it's a way you scan, and it's just a bad scanner. It's just not really good, and it constantly tells you wrong things. That's a different kind of problem. Now, there could be a scenario where you scan a system, you get no notice at all from it, no problems. The device is absolutely fine. It tells you it is super secure. You don't have to worry about anything, except the scanner missed a vulnerability. Either it doesn't know of the vulnerability or it did not properly identify the vulnerability and it doesn't tell you anything. So in that scenario, it's a false negative. Nope, negative, nothing here. Sorry, nothing to see here. completely negative, didn't find a thing. Your scan was clean. When in reality, actually there was something that you should know about. Maybe it's time for a second opinion in that scenario. Some people do run multiple scans. There are some companies I've worked with that maintain 2 separate antivirus engines in their security department so they can scan through 2 separately created scanning engines to see if they can either get both of them to say that something is malware or get none of them to say it. So they can get just another data point to work through there. So pretty important to be able to break those out and see them properly. If you do get a false positive or even a false negative, go back to the people that created the scanner or the thing that identified this and absolutely go through that and see if you can get it fixed. Often they will fix the signature for you so that doesn't happen again. That means that if you chose false positive, 78% of you chose D. That is the right answer. 10% of you chose false negative. We already learned now that false negatives when we never hear that something is there. So that's not the right answer. A credentialed scan means that we performed this scan as a legitimate user. We logged into the system as a real user with real credentials, and we were able to perform the scan as if we were a user, which often gives you a little more information. You have a little more access to the operating system. But in this case, the question had nothing to do with credentialed or non-credentialed. So that wasn't the situation. We have 3% of you that said non-intrusive scan. Non-intrusive scans are when you are scanning, but there is no direct connection or scanning or interaction with a device. So a non-intrusive scan was not the scenario here. In fact, this one kind of sounds like an intrusive scan. We were actively connecting to this device to determine if that vulnerability exists. And 2% of you said low severity. And although it could be a low severity, we're just not quite sure at this point since this system doesn't have any of this vulnerability. It's not low severity. It's no severity is what it should be. So that's the important part. That is an important one. So make sure you look at the options for this. The one that would best describe this result is false positive. 77% of you did get that one right. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, which means you already have your Security Plus or Network Plus or A Plus certification, and you need an hour of a webinar category CEU, then what you need to do is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click on the link that says Contact Us. That will bring up a form that will tell you to put in your name, your email address. In the subject line of that form, please put that this is September 2021 Security Plus Study Group. And in the body of that message on a line by itself, please put the super secret code word of the month, credentialed scan. Kind of pulled that one out. We did a little different this time. Credentialed scan is the super secret code word of the month. And then if you'd like to put anything else in that message, you're welcome to put. I read through all of them. So absolutely put whatever you would like into that message as well. Click that, and it takes me about a week to turn these around. Hopefully I can get them back to you this weekend. That way you have them as soon as they get to me. Credentialed scan is the super secret code word of the month that you input by going to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, clicking the Contact Us link, putting in your name, email, and subject line that says September 2021 Security Plus Study Group, and the word credentialed scan. I think a number of you are not collecting CEUs at this point. I think most of you are using the Cert Master CE. I don't care what you do, though. If you want a CEU, I'll send you a CEU. More than happy to send you an email with a digital signature that verifies that you must have been here because you knew how to do what I just told you to do. If you don't follow those instructions, I can't send you that particular email. Performing that set of steps is part of the process of knowing that you were here and listening to the study group. So that's why I do it that way. Let's do another question. We have time for another one. Let's get this one in. People argue about this one all the time, so I thought I would do a question on it. This question asks, which of the following is the meeting point between FAR and FRR? Is it CER, AES, TPM, MTBF, or CSR? Is this question just a disaster? This is nothing but acronyms. Let's see if we can get this one going pretty well. The question asks, which of the following is the meeting point between FAR and FRR? Is it CER, AES, TPM, MTBF, or CSR? All of those are real things, by the way. They're not just a jumbled mess of letters I stuck together. They are all real technologies. And as I'm looking through them now, I'm thinking, I have to explain what all of these are. As we go through this, we'll figure it out. We'll make sure we get there and make it all happen. Whenever I start looking at the details. So you email the secret word to where and with what info? Sorry. You got to be here and listening to know what to do with that super secret code word. That's the whole point of the process. So you'll have to wait until the replay and go back and listen again, I guess. That's what I would do anyway. Make a note of the timestamp. That would be good. So some of you are figuring out where it was. He was one of those situations where I think whenever I start breaking this down into other pieces, I think some of you may be able to figure this one out if you know what the acronyms are. I think that's where we would go. Maybe some of you know these. We'll see if you know what all of these. And if you don't know what one of those acronyms are, make a point, because I just said you need to know the acronyms so that you know what the acronyms do. So if with any of these are all real acronyms, make sure you make a note of any that you don't recognize so that you can go back and figure out what that acronym is and that you can understand what that acronym really means. Not just the name, but what you would do with it. Let's see how you did with this one. Not a lot of people logging in and answering this one. This one's a little more difficult. This one asks, which of the following is the meeting point between FAR and FRR? Is that CER, AES, TPM, MTBF, or CSR? It's got to be one of those, right? Let's see what you answered first before I look at the answers. 58% of you say it's CER. 17% said CSR, and 12% said MTBF. We have 8% that said TPM and 6% that said AES. If there's something that we have in technology, we make an acronym of it. And this is a good example of that. Well, when you see FAR and FRR, you should already be thinking about biometrics. The false acceptance rate, or FAR, means that an unauthorized user is using the biometrics and it's allowing them or accepting that as a legitimate user, usually because we don't have the sensitivity up enough in the biometric device. If you're working with biometrics, this is an important concern. You don't want somebody coming up and putting their fingerprint on something and gaining access when they aren't the person who has the fingerprint in the system. That's not good at all. It's not what you want to do. There's also the FRR, sort of on the other side of things, where an authorized user shows up. I have a biometric reader in my house that's this way that I use for something else. It's a safe that you would put your finger on and the safe is supposed to open. The way it works for me is I put my finger on it and it beeps and turns red. I take my finger off, put my finger back on it, it beeps and it turns red. I do it a third time, it beeps and turns green and opens up. So in that particular case, there were two instances of a false rejection rate, or an FRR, because that particular reader is just too sensitive for something like that. Which means there's got to be a midpoint, right? If we have sensitivity that we're adjusting, we want the sensitivity to be high enough that we don't get false acceptance rates, but not so high that it creates false rejection rates. And the midpoint between both of those is a crossover error rate, or CER. This effectively is how accurate the biometric system is. And if we're adjusting the biometrics, we want to figure out where we can have kind of in the middle of these. If you were to create a chart for both of these, it would look something like this, where we would have our false acceptance rate. We're getting a lot of errors, so we adjust the sensitivity, make the sensitivity a little bit more sensitive. We have a false rejection rate, like the one that's on my safe, and I have to now, maybe there is a way I can adjust that sensitivity. Wait, you don't get that question yet. Now we're going to do another question, even though it's top of the hour. Somewhere in the middle is the crossover error rate, or the CER. So that is what you would use. You see that flicker? See, I got more work to do and we're done here today. The CER is what we're working on. In fact, 58% of you said, yep, that's what it is. It's the CER is what we would use. The 16% of you said it's a CSR, a certificate signing request. Well, this has nothing to do with certificates. We're not in that section of the exam, but I put that acronym because it sounded a lot like CER. 16% of you thought it sounded a lot like CER too. You chose that one, but a certificate signing request is something you would send to a certificate authority to sign your certificate. So that's not the issue. We also have 11% of you MTBF, the mean time between failures. We were talking about MTBF on a previous question. The mean time between failures is how often, on average, that device is going to fail. We also have a trusted platform module, a TPM. 8% of you chose TPM for this. Trusted platform module is that cryptographic device that's usually integrated into your motherboard, or a module that you can add onto your motherboard. There was the big hubbub that created when Microsoft introduced Windows 11 and said you can't run Windows 11 unless you have the latest version of a TPM 2.0 in your system. A lot of people don't have that. So they're kind of changing and they're changing some of their story with that, by the way. But TPM is not something that would be a meeting point between FAR and FRR. And then 7% of you said AES. That's an encryption methodology, an encryption cipher. AES commonly seen on things like wireless networks. 802.11 with their WPA2, WPA3. AES is used extensively there. That's encryption. Has nothing to do with the meeting point between FAR and FRR. The answer is CER. 58% of you said CER. That is the right answer. You got it absolutely correct. That's where that came from for both of those. James T in the chat room, thank you for the $15 super chat. Looks like you were studying for your A+, thought to drop in and start studying Security Plus. You got a lot to learn on the Security Plus side. Very different than the A+ side. So welcome aboard. See how well things go on the security side. It's a fun side to be on. One of those you usually have to work into. Now, you saw that next question, so we're going to do that next question. I know it's top of the hour. We're in overtime now, everybody. This is, I'm not even going to do, can I? Yes, let's do this one. Let's do this next question. It asks, which of the following provides a method of creating a secure digital signature, creating secure digital signatures in an email client? Which of the following provides a method of creating secure digital signatures in an email client? Is it SMIME, SRTP, IPsec, LDAP-S, or NTP-SEC? Which of the following provides a method of creating secure digital signatures in an email client? Is that SMIME, SRTP, IPsec, LDAP-S, or NTP-SEC? It's got to be one of those, right? Those are all real things. Again, didn't make any of that up. Again, an acronym question. I guess more of an acronym answer. Most of the answers are acronymy. Acronymish? Acronymed. They are right there. So you've got some to choose from. And if you're on your exam and you don't know the answer, you should guess. You don't get any points taken away if you answer wrong. There's no penalties for doing something like that. But if you don't answer, you won't get any points just by guessing. You could possibly guess at this one and get it right. So always guess. Doesn't hurt you to guess on all of these. So if you know what they are, that's great. But if you don't, you should at least take a stab at it. This would be good. This is a question that could be 501 or 601 for those of you that have been around for a bit. You'll figure these out. See if this one happens to be something you recognize. You probably are even doing this if you work in an organization with email. This may be something you're already using. Maybe you don't even realize you're using it. That could happen too. If your email client's really good, you may not even realize you're doing this. So you'll have to go into the configuration of your email client and see what it happens to say. Let's see how you did with this one. It asked, which of the following provides a method of creating secure digital signatures in an email client? Is that SMIME, SRTP, IPsec, LDAP-S, or NTP-Sec? And you answered, 77% of you answered SMIME. We have 7%, 7%, and 7% that chose SRTP, IPsec, and LDAP-S, a three-way tie for second. And lastly, in third place, at 2%, NTP-Sec. So with SMIME being 78% now of everybody, I think we could probably call it and say, yep, SMIME, the Secure Multipurpose Internet Mail Extensions. SMIME is the right answer. If you have Microsoft Outlook and you are digitally signing messages, you are encrypting messages or decrypting messages in Microsoft Outlook, you're using SMIME. Built into SMIME to be able to make that happen. There is security around POP and IMAP that you could take advantage of. Usually it extends itself with using SSL, or what today is TLS. But if you are working with digital signatures and you're doing encryption and decryption and you're not using PGP, then you're probably using SMIME. You would have to look at your client to see what it happened to be. I think that's one where might be a good one to look through as well. 78% of you knew that one was solid. You probably are using SMIME. So a good question to end on. SRTP, the Secure Real-Time Protocol, is used with voice over IP protocols, which of course could be voice, video, communication, and creating a secure version of phone calls effectively. IPsec is a secure tunneling, commonly used as a secure tunneling protocol, not something that would create digital signatures. If you're connecting two sites together over an encrypted tunnel, then you're probably using IPsec. LDAP-S is the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol Secure, commonly used to be able to store information in a database and retrieve or access that information over a secure channel using usually SSL. And that's why we use LDAP-S to do that. And then if you want the secure version of the network time protocol, then you would want to use NTP-Sec. None of those are anywhere close to being the right answer. The right one, the one that everyone pretty much accessed, 78% of you chose it anyway, SMIME, the Secure Multipurpose Internet Mail Extensions, would be the right ones to do this. Most of these acronyms I remember off the top of my head, but you do not have to remember the acronym in order to answer these questions. In fact, very often, we rarely say, is the client configured properly for secure multipurpose internet mail extensions? We never say that. We always say, is that client configured for SMIME? And we almost don't even remember the acronym, but we know what SMIME is. So don't worry so much about the name to acronym conversion. Most of the time we're referring to these things by acronym. So if you can make the jump past that and you know what the acronym does, you can almost create the actual name of it based on that. So you'll know when you get to that point. You'll be in a meeting with a lot of folks and you're talking about the new SMIME configuration. We need to upgrade SMIME. We have a new certificate authority we need to implement with SMIME. Example of that, being able to work through those. All of the questions we went through today came from the exam objectives. So make sure you're familiar with the objectives. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. Take the link, download that, or go to the Google machine, type in CompTIA exam objectives, download the objectives for Security Plus. Incredibly important to have that. Make sure that you have the exam objectives. They are everything in this exam, and they are extensive. So make sure you have those. I can only say it 1,000,000 times, and I'll say it 1,000,000 more. Make sure that you're working with that. We do one of these study groups for Security Plus every month. I have another Security Plus study group scheduled for Wednesday, October the 27th. In about a month, we'll do another one of these. You can see next month I have A Plus on the 12th and 14th, Network Plus on the 20th, Security Plus on the 27th. These dates can change. These dates do change. In fact, if you were looking last month at when we were doing our study group for Security Plus, it was actually next week. And then something happened to my schedule next week, and I had to move it into this week. So these things change all the time. Make sure that if you're planning to attend one of my study groups, that you either link to the Google Calendar that's on my site, or you visit and view the Google Calendar on my site. You can go to the same link for both of those, professormesser.com/calendar. Go there and you can know exactly. Whenever I have to make a change, I make it there first. You're the first one to know if you go to professormesser.com/calendar. That's so important. Also, don't forget that if you've gone through all of these videos, there are so many Security Plus videos. This took me forever to create all these videos. It was extensive having to go through all of these. So I took all of the text, all the important charts, all the graphics, demonstrations that I do in my videos, and I put them in one document. And I have a digital edition PDF or a physical edition book that you can get with all of these notes in it. It looks a little bit like this. Here are the SY0-601 course notes. I'm going to flip ahead a little bit so you can kind of get a feel for all of the details that are in here. Demonstrations, graphics, charts, information, all the text from all the slides is in here. You don't need the slides. I put it all in this. A lot in there. So whenever you start going through and figuring out what the different options are for working through these different challenging sets of information for Security Plus, this is probably one of the hardest exams CompTIA makes, is this Security Plus, because it's so big. This is 120 pages, longest one we've ever done. If you get the physical version, by the way, I will ship you the physical version, and I'll give you the digital version for free so you can look through that while you're waiting on it. So very useful to have that available, especially if you're someone that is challenged with having these notes available. There's so much here. There's so much to write that it's almost overwhelming. Have a look at the notes. You can find it at professormesser.com/601cn, or just follow the links on my website. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A, but there's even more Q&A. Instead of me asking the questions in the next hour, you're going to ask the questions in the next hour. So stick around for the after show. In the meantime, I remind you that you can get your weekly Security Plus pop quiz question on Twitter and Instagram by visiting professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/Instagram. It's all there. And of course, if you want to see my YouTube videos, they're all out on professormesser.com/YouTube. Don't forget about the voucher discounts that are already there and waiting for you. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and you can get those for a discounted price without requiring any special discount coupons or codes or plugins to your browser, any of that nonsense. Just streamline the whole process by going to professormesser.com/vouchers. And don't forget about the course notes and the practice exams at professormesser.com/securitycn. Well, we've got plenty more to talk about. Stick around for the after show. Otherwise, we will see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Well, let's see if I can now get the phone lines up and running, because it's the after show now. It's what we should be working on with the after show. So, I need to bring up my Skype so I can call in to my after show. I need to bring up and call into my own after show cloud-based call-in, because you're not calling me, you're calling the cloud, which means if I want to talk to you, then I need to call the cloud. So if you will bear with me one moment, I am going to click on a few buttons here, and I'm going to call the cloud, and the cloud is going to talk to me. Hi, Cloud. Are you there, Cloud?
Thank you for...
Are you there, Cloud? Yes, let's type in the code that we need and see if the nice lady accepts that.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
Well, I will do that. And if I type in that 6-digit PIN...
Welcome, Professor Messer.
Well, thanks, nice lady. She's welcoming me. That means that I am logged in. Now I need to make sure that I put the right information up on the screen so that you can see the numbers that we're working with. If you're in the continental U.S., you can call in as well, the call-in number, over voice communication using your telephone. Toll free, 855-785-RJ45. That is 855-785-7545. We've also got a way that you can call in for free from outside of the continental United States. You can call in using Skype. No Skype minutes are required because it's a toll-free number. You just put a +1 at the beginning. +1 855-785-7545. It's a good one. In the chat room, questions that are coming in. Here's a good one. Does anyone know a list of the most popular security tools used by security analysts? Why, yes, I do. In fact, I have a documented list of them. It's called the CompTIA Exam Objectives. There's a great list in there, and it's spot on, by the way. Of course, there's not just any single list that you would find if you were going to work in IT security. There's so many different tools and functions and things you would work through. But if you go to the SY0-601 exam objectives, which I'm pulling up on the screen right now, you will be able to bring this over, move some things off my screen, clean this up a little bit, and see if I could find them on here as well. Here's the exam objectives themselves. And the ones that you're looking for is the list of options. The list, this would be in section 4. So you go to section 4.1. Given a scenario, use the appropriate tool to assess organizational security. If you ever had a little bit of time on your hands and you were trying to figure out what you want to do next, you need to learn about traceroute, NSLOOKUP, IPconfig, Nmap, ping, hping, netstat, netcat, IP scanners, ARP, route, curl, harvester, sniper, scanless, DNS, enum, nessus, cuckoo, head, tail, cat, grep, chmod logger, SSH, PowerShell, Python, OpenSSL, TCP relay, TCP dump, Wireshark, DD, memdump, WinHex, FTK imager, and autopsy, among others. So there is a fantastic list that should get you started. Plus, if you go to that list and it gets you started, you have to know those things for the exam anyway. So I think that would be a great place to start in your studies to be able to know what tools people are using. And we are using that. So I think that's one that would be really useful if you are trying to figure it out, trying to figure out what tools are they using. Now, I wrote a whole book on Nmap. It took me months. So just one of those utilities, you could spend months trying to learn the nuances of how to use those tools. But we don't have months to be able to do that. So you have to know the basics of how to use those tools. I show you some of the basics in my videos in section 4.1, but you can go a lot deeper. In fact, if you became an expert in Nmap, nothing wrong with that. That's actually a very good thing if you became an expert in Nmap. People will absolutely use that. You might even want to spend a lot of your time becoming an expert in Python, in PowerShell, in Nmap, in any one of these tools. They are so valuable to have that information. So make sure you're familiar with what those are and how those would work. Can be pretty useful. Also in the chat room, do companies hire if you don't have a 4-year degree but you have certificates? Maybe, if the company doesn't care so much about 4-year degrees. But what I have found is you need all of these. There's a link that is in my video description on YouTube, and this is on my YouTube channel, how to get a job in IT with no experience. And that question about how to get a job in IT with no experience goes through all the things you really should have to position yourself the best when you are trying to get a job in IT. And the first 2 elements of this are a formal education, so a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, ideally in technology, but not necessarily. And the second one is certifications. Certifications don't replace a formal degree. A formal degree does not replace certifications. They provide different important skills to show an employer, things that you have done. And the other 2 on the list, the other 2 elements that I have, one of them is some practical experience, which doesn't necessarily mean a job, but it does mean something hopefully professional, but certainly practical. And I explain how you can get some of those. And the last one is, someone who works there. We often don't even think about that. But that's actually a pretty important one. So all 4 of those elements rather, are things that would really, really help you to be able to do that. Think, how viable and marketable are the new Google IT certifications versus CompTIA? I don't know. Go look at the people hiring in your area and see how many of them are asking for the new Google IT certification and how many are asking for CompTIA A+. There's your answer. And it's different depending on where you are, even within where you are in the U.S. So make sure you have a look at all those. Let's go to the phone lines, and let's start with the 812 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
My name's Jeremy, calling from Indiana.
Hey, Jeremy. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I'm actually in my 40s. I'm switching over to IT from my current field.
Good for you.
And my 4-year program is, offering the A plus, the Network plus, Security plus, and everything. And I'm trying to I've heard that for A plus, you build a computer to learn it. For networking and security, you have the home lab. But for the computer, what exactly kind of specs would be needed to get me through the whole course and have enough power to do everything?
I don't know that you have to have a computer for the A+. It certainly helps if you have one that you can physically take apart and work on, that's on a desk somewhere. One ideally that you would be working on and not relying on. You don't want to have to be pressured to put it back together and make sure it's going to work if you've never done this before. And there were a number of people in the last study group that were even talking about going to a recycle facility or even on eBay, people sell computers for parts, and it's very inexpensive. You may even find them at a local thrift shop. That's a great place to pick up a $5 computer just so you can pull it apart, see what's inside, see what you can identify and work with that. There are also some very good labs available that can sort of virtually take you through that as well, so you don't have to have a physical device. But when you get into A+, I think a lot of people like to have a computer that has at least enough storage and maybe enough memory. 4 gig's not enough, 8 gig kind of the minimum, to be able to run a virtual machine. And with that virtual machine, if you are running Windows 10 on your local computer, but you know that there might be some Windows 7 topics that you would like to become familiar with, it's useful if you can run Windows 7 in a virtual machine so that you don't have to reformat any drives or have separate boot systems or have separate partitions. And it's very, very easy to do. You can load up VirtualBox and load up a VM of Windows and simply run that. The real challenge you'll run into, of course, is where do you get a copy of Windows that you can use, especially Windows 7. They don't sell Windows 7 anymore. So where do you even get that? Well, I'm glad you asked. You get that from, let me bring up the picture of modern.ie, modern.ie, not .com, .ie. This takes you to a Microsoft website. This is sanctioned by Microsoft. They're aware of this. They made it themselves. Under a tools menu on this particular site is an option for virtual machines. And the end user license agreement for these virtual machines is set so that if you're not using this in production, if this is for lab type use, you can use these. And they have Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 all running as virtual machines. So you can load up Windows 7, you can load it up and run it in VirtualBox and simply download the VM right from that website. That's at modern.ie. You just have to make sure you have enough memory in the system you're running. 8 gigs should take care of you because you're not doing a lot in this VM. You're just sort of booting it and making sure it can run. And but you need enough storage space. This uses a few gig of storage on your hard drive or your SSD. You just have to make sure you have both of those. That probably is the most important one you'll find because learning the software can be difficult if you don't have that operating system in place. And the fact that it's free is all the better, Jeremy.
Perfect. Love to hear that kind of information. Free is great.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Let us know how it goes. Take care. Thanks for the call. One of these things that I always focus on is knowing the differences between these operating systems. So having a resource that has Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10. So if you only have one of these, maybe you've got an old system that's still running Windows 7 and you were never upgraded it to Windows 10. Well, now you can still run Windows 10 in a VM and become more familiar with Windows 10. Maybe they'll have Windows 11 when October rolls around. Wouldn't that be nice? Let's go back to phone lines and talk to the 256 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from?
Hi, Professor Messer. This is Reed. I'm calling from Huntsville, Alabama.
Hey, Reed, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Well, I was going to do something for you and back you up on your claims that you need those 4 things to pass your certifications.
Talk to me.
What happens when you do? Well, in July 2019, I finished watching all your free videos, passed my A+, and then in November 2020, paid for your videos and passed my Network Plus, and then this last July, passed my Security Plus.
Wow.
And I just got written offer for a very nice job.
Very nice. That's the way it's supposed to work. Now,
So
when you
it
went through
works,
that, obviously the certificates, I'm sure the certifications you earned were, of course, helpful. They're one of those things that add on to what you were already doing. Were there other things the employer was looking for that you had in your resume that you might want to recommend to others?
Well, what I followed what you recommended. When I passed my A+, I was trying to think of somewhere I could, get some hands-on because I'm not currently working in the IT field.
Gotcha.
So I contacted my church, and I said, hey, I got my A+. I can probably break a computer pretty well now.
Right.
Maybe even fix it. If there's something I can do, let me know. And they slid a key across the desk a week later and said, you're in charge of 4 campuses. We're going to webcast in 2020.
That's the beauty of forgiveness right there.
Yes, it is. But then COVID hit, and I was the main AV and Zoom producer and trainer for others to do theirs on the separate campuses because I can't be everywhere at once yet.
So let me,
really well.
timing-wise then, did they talk about doing the streaming part prior to the COVID outbreak?
Yeah, it was on their budget to upgrade the main sanctuary and chapel.
Perfect timing.
They put HDMI throughout the building. Yeah, it was really good timing. They were planning on going not slowly virtual, but just be able to, because they can't fit 8 congregations in one building.
Right.
There's not a big enough building for it. So they wanted to webcast out to the other buildings, and now we're Zoomcasting out to the other buildings.
That is fantastic, and I imagine that's kind of that's learning. I don't want to say by fire, given the context, but you were certainly learning a lot in a very short period of time, and there was certainly a very good purpose behind doing all of this, and you could probably see the results of that. What type of things did you manage to learn as you were going through that putting together streaming process?
Well, we learned that when you add new equipment, it breaks everything else.
So true. Yes, that is a great point to bring up in an interview.
Yeah, well, but something broke for some congregation every week for the first couple of months. Something didn't work right, and then we ended up taking what the church upgraded us to, which was a big AV rack, and then we upgraded it with a separate sound module, and then we upgraded it with a second PTZ camera in the main sanctuary. So the main sanctuary can now act as a giant VTC room.
Nice.
And when they found out that we did the wiring and installing the camera and, putting the cable underneath the air conditioning ducts and all that kind of stuff, and then getting it to all work and teaching others how to do it and documenting how to do it, I think that's what turned the leaf on the interview.
That is fantastic. It's one of those, if things don't break, you're never going to learn anything. And things in a corporate environment, in a environment like this, where you're putting together a whole new set of technologies, there's things that are not going to work. And a lot of people get frustrated over this. And I always tell folks, this is not a time for frustration. We're going to dive into this. This is fantastic. We're going to figure out why this is breaking. We're going to figure out what the problem is with it. We're going to resolve the issue. And then you got a great story to tell people.
Yes, I ended up with several great stories of how to break things. So your advice on the 4 ways to pass those certifications and the 4 ways to land a job when you're not currently working in IT, they all work.
So the last one on the 4th element of getting a job in IT with no experience was knowing someone who worked there. Were you able to take advantage of that? And is that something where you already knew someone who worked there, or did you meet someone through this process?
I knew people in the IT field that were encouraging me to get my certifications.
Got it.
But when I got my certifications, they didn't have any openings. So I actually met I it was a blind interview. I met him at a virtual job fair.
Great.
And it impressed them enough there that they contacted me later. We did a phone interview, and then we went through the whole hiring process. I'll probably start with them.
That's fantastic.
A little bit later next month.
You always think that nothing will come from
those.
That's a great story altogether.
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate it. And I just ran into one of my other IT buddies this morning. He asked me how it was going. I gave him the update. And then he's training people that are transitioning from the military into IT.
Oh, great.
And you're the top resource. I said, go to this guy, have them get the free videos, have them get the practice tests, learn this stuff, get a book, get a video, get hands-on, get some lab time. And he's like, yeah, send me those links. So you're very popular here in the 256 area code.
I love it. And I love the whole area of Huntsville. We used to be part of my territory. I used to travel there quite a bit and stay in the Marriott overlooking the rockets that are there. It's a fantastic place and great people as well. Congratulations on your certifications. Congratulations on the hard work with the streaming service you've set up. I personally know how hard that is. And congratulations on the job offer as well. It's all going to be amazing amounts of fun going forward. I can't wait to hear the stories that come out of whatever you do next. Congratulations, Reed.
Thanks, Professor.
Appreciate the call. Best of luck. Those are things we should grab. That's a shiny little piece of something we found on the ground. We should put that one in our pocket. Having those little tips and tricks that we could kind of put away for later are so valuable, in knowing what people are doing with these things becomes so important. This is one of those scenarios, I think, where it's not one thing, it's multiple things all put together that sort of combine somehow to make all of this happen. And I think Reed's story was just a great one. It's what happens when you really apply yourself. You put some of these things to the test. You throw yourself into some crazy project, practical experience, and then finally getting that job offer is just phenomenal. In the chat room, these are great questions that don't have an answer, but somehow people think they have an answer. Is wired or wireless more secure? They're both just as bad. There you go. Glad I was able to. There's no way to know what context you're talking about when you say, are they secure or less secure? That's one of those where I don't know what you mean. Do you mean the data inside of it? Do you mean the infrastructure? Do you mean the ability for somebody to tap into the link? Do you mean the type of data you're able to retrieve from that? Do you mean the unencrypted data that you would receive through that? There's just so much going on there. Can't parse that one out. There's not an answer to that question, is the answer to that question. Back to phone calls, 317 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Caller. Are you there, caller? Are you on mute,
Hello?
caller? Hello, caller.
Oh, hey. Good. It's this morning over here in the West Coast. Good morning.
I appreciate you calling. What can we do for you?
I wanted to ask about SOAR as far as Security Plus is concerned.
Ask about what specifically?
Just what, can you explain it and what all goes into it?
The idea of every manager that you will ever find, whether it's in security or whether it's in network or operations or data centers, is they want to do more with less people. You know, people are expensive. Having people working for you are awfully expensive things. So what a lot of organizations want is more automation. They want more orchestration, especially on the web side and on the cloud side, is being able to automate and have security, orchestration, automation, response. So that if you go through the process of identifying a vulnerability, notifying people the vulnerability is there, configuring firewall rules that would block that particular vulnerability, and then maybe take data that was already infected and quarantine that data and automate the entire process That effectively is the concept behind SOAR. So you will see this promoted most commonly to the security side, but the folks that are in security want to be able to, they want to be able to automate this as well. People that are in security don't want to spend all of their time looking at log files go by. This isn't the Matrix where we're simply staring at a screen and watching all of the text roll by. We don't have time for that. And in fact, if you do that, you'll never see what you're looking for. So we need something that can either take data, reports, active reports of things that are going on right now, combine all of this together with our log files and the data that we have locally, and be able to identify, react, and be able to stop these things as they're coming into our network. That's the foundation of SOAR. Now, the concept is a broad one, and there are so many different ways to implement SOAR. And most of the time, it's a number of different components. There's a lot of companies that will sell you one big SOAR strategy with all of the hardware and software you would need to implement that. But the concept's a very good one. And it's one that companies are starting to get on top of right now so that they could spend more time doing other security tasks instead of constantly looking at log files and being able to react to those.
Okay.
Hopefully that's giving you something to work on. I give you some examples of this on the Security Plus course. You don't have to know a lot of this deep integration and how it operates for Security Plus, but it's useful to know the name. It's useful to understand what people are doing with it, and it may come up on your exam, certainly because it is part of the exam objectives.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Appreciate the call. If you ever get into a scenario where you're dealing at that level, these are big projects to implement something like this. They're great projects to be part of because every company wants to have some level of implementation of SOAR, SOAR. So make sure that if you are part of that, you learn as much as you can. It's one of those things that you can kind of put in your pocket and take with you for the rest of your career because everybody's going to be doing this going forward. And the more automation we have, the better off we're going to be. We can stop these problems before they get into our network, block those. Let's go back to the phone lines. The 404 area code, Atlanta. What can we do for you, Atlanta? Thanks for calling.
Hey, what's going on, Professor? I got one question. I got one possible answer to why you moved your study group to this week. The question is, how's it going as far as CISSA or CAPSA as far as some of your study material? And seeing as that this is the week of my birthday, you just had to find a way for me to tune in live. I think that's what the second part of that is.
That's the important part. You got me. That's the whole reason I changed the entire schedule around so that we would move up things from last week. I would have to do a lot more work this week, but so worth it just so we could fit this in to your birthday week. I think that was really the most important part of this. To answer the first question, and the first question is sort of a broad question. Other people have asked this in the chat room already. Which is what's next. If you go to my website, you know that there's an A+, a Network Plus, and a Security Plus course there, but there's room to fit more stuff into the menus, right? We could do more courses, and I do have plans to create some more courses once Network Plus is updated, which we're almost done updating that, and then right after that, A+ gets updated the beginning of the year, and that'll be a number of months to get all of that content updated. But at that point, none of those 3 certifications change for the next 2 years. They're sort of locked in for this next 2-year time period, which is now on me to determine, now what do I do for 2 years? Well, I could just sit here in the dark and do nothing, but what good is that? Instead, we need some more courses. So I do want to produce certainly one other course, maybe another one. It takes a long time to create everything I need behind these courses from the ground level. This is the hard part when you're creating a course from scratch. This could take 6 months or more to create a course from scratch. But some of the stuff that I'm interested in, I already have some of the content already. Well, there's lots of ways to go with this. I could go with some Microsoft courses, with Azure and some of the cloud-based technologies, and maybe Office-type technologies. A lot of people are implementing those. There's Red Hat, has tons of Linux. There is Cisco, has tons of networking and security courses that could be done. And of course, CompTIA has some higher level security certifications that would be great. The CySA, the CISSP, Pen Test Plus are all great courses with all great information. Those would be good courses to go with. The idea of doing all of these is something where I technically don't have to make a decision until probably the springtime, the April-May timeframe of 2022. So I just don't have an answer yet. All of the things that people are listing, though, the CISSP, CySA, Pen Test, Red Hat, Linux Plus, Microsoft, AWS, VMware, Palo Alto Networks, all of this is on my list. All of them are on my list. Obviously, I can't do all of these. I have to pick something.
Right.
And I don't know what that thing is. If you ask me today what I want to do next, I would give you an answer. The problem is tomorrow, if you ask me the same question, I would give you a different answer because I keep going back and forth. Every time I go to the internet and do a little more research, there's always an article that pushes me in a different direction. It's so hard to understand what people are doing because there is no centralized database or site I can go to get even a popularity understanding of these certifications. It becomes difficult. I can do some of that on Google Trends. I can do some of it on forums and other, maybe on Reddit. I can do some research on Discord. There's all these different places you can go. But CySA and CISSP are certainly on the list. I don't know if they're going to creep up high enough on the list yet. They are on the list, but they're not a solid top 5 for me quite yet. I need somebody to convince me, but they are there. And as I mentioned, that could all change tomorrow. I don't know. It just depends on what goes on in our industry, what goes on with CompTIA, what goes on with Microsoft, what goes on with Apple, what goes on with Amazon, all of these are good certs. I just need to figure out what makes sense. And what people might need to be able to do that. So the answer is not an answer. I'm afraid I just have a bad answer for you. I apologize, but that's what's going on in my head right now. You could look in there and see all the little gears that are turning. That's what they're turning over. And nothing is quite yet in concrete, in the stone, but it will get there at the beginning of next year. I will figure it out.
Cool. Well, an easier question, and maybe I blinked and missed it, or I had you on mute. What was the super secret word for this month?
Since some of you have been asking in the chat room, maybe I threw it out a little bit too quick. I don't know. Somebody in the chat room want to throw that out. I always throw it out, and I don't write it down. And after I'm done, I look at what people have submitted and go, oh, yeah, that's what I chose. That word right there. So somebody in the chat room put it in the chat room. I will delete it from the chat room, but I will say it again once somebody puts it in there. Credentialed scan was the super secret code word of the month. Credentialed scan. That'll at least, I normally don't do this, tell you what the super secret code word again is. I usually tell you to go back and listen, but now you don't have to. Or if you were and listening this far, you deserve to know what it is anyway. Credentialed scan.
Or you could give them the bonus one of happy birthday to Kareem.
That's right. I'll accept that as well.
They've been really
Happy birthday, Kareem will be completely acceptable. And I mean that legitimately as a super secret code word of the month. So I will send you that because you were listening and and we just made the second one up. You don't have to know both, just any one of those. Send it to me and we're good to go. Happy birthday, Kareem. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. Talk to you later.
Appreciate you. Take care. That's one of those where I want to be sure you're listening, you're watching, you have all of the things that you need to earn the CEUs, if that's what you're gathering. I realize a lot of you don't do that anymore, that you're doing the CertMaster CE or you're using other methods to renew your certification, but a lot of you still are. So I want you to be able to do that, to have that option. And so you don't have to send me an email. CompTIA will take you on your word that you were here, and you can put down that you were here for an hour of the webinar category CEU. I just like to send you the information. I like to send you the email so that if they come back to you and say, we want some verification that you attended this event, you've got a digitally signed email from me that they can validate with that digital signature, and it's what I sent you. They can validate it really did come from me. So that's just something I think you can't go wrong. Other people have told me, no, they won't accept that. No, they absolutely accept it. In fact, they don't have to accept something from me. They don't need that. But that's only for collecting that continuing education unit credit. That is the one. I do not send it with SMIME. I create that digital signature with PGP. So I'm not using SMIME on my side. Most of the time, I'm using Google Mail. For that particular function, I use Apple Mail that is hooked to Google Mail with IMAP, because I have an automated function on my side that grabs your email, parses out what you've sent me, rewrites it into another message I'm sending back to you so that I know what year, what month, what the code word was. I can confirm that. So I do a quick verification that what you're sending me is legit, that it's the right secret code word, it's the right month and year, and then I can just send that off. It just has to be close. As long as you're close, sometimes they're not spelled right. That's okay. You're close enough. I know what you were trying to say. Yep, you're good. You were here. You heard it. It goes back. So, but you have to follow that process. If you don't know the process, then you have to go back and listen to the first hour. Somewhere in that first hour, I describe the process. Another question in the chat room is from Zach, who says, are the 177 videos I have for SY0-601 plus your practice exam enough to pass the exam? Well, it could be. I've certainly designed them to have all of the objectives in the videos and in the course notes and the practice exams. But as I've always told you, you should never limit yourself. You should use as many different study materials as possible. In fact, if you go to my website, I have a whole section of Security Plus study resources. It's in the Security Plus menu right there at the bottom are the Security Plus study recommendations, where, of course, I recommend my videos, of course, but you might want to use someone else's as well, which is fine. I have some books here that might be good options for you for the SY0-601. These are three of the most popular ones. I do recommend the CompTIA Security Plus CertMaster Labs. These are phenomenal. Probably the best integrated labs I've ever used in that browser-based online system. To the point that if you've ever seen in some of these online labs, you have to type a lot of things in. They even have, you can certainly go to the command line and type that in, but in the instructions, you can click on what they want you to type, and it automatically types it in. Like, you don't have to fight the keyboard. Like, it's not a typing learning lab. It's me trying to understand what's going on in security lab. So those CertMaster labs are on my site. They're also discounted over what you would buy on the CompTIA site. So again, those are built in. Let's close the ad that comes up. So there they are. They're not inexpensive. They're $169, but they're $199 if you were to buy them on the CompTIA website. And I do have a list of all of the different labs that are here. I should really do a quick video of this. Maybe I'll work on that this weekend so you can really see it. It really is an impressive set of labs. Also, the last thing on that page is Q&A. I think my practice exams are great to use for that. So if you're someone who needs more Q&A, you want to test yourself, the practice labs are there as well, along with the practice exams. So you've got a couple of things to work with. Get some hands-on, get some final Q&A. Got lots you can work with. And all of those, if you purchase your voucher, you purchase the labs, you support the site every time you do that. So I try to give you a discount over where you can get it somewhere else. But it's also, if you need the labs anyway, save some money, and it's a great way to help us keep these videos going as well. So pretty impressive stuff. I love those labs. If somebody wants to see the labs later, I'm more than happy. Maybe I can find them and bring them up. In the meantime, Let's, nope, the call got terminated. So we're not going to do that. I need to bring up those labs myself. Maybe I can bring up the labs if I can remember the URL for the CertMaster labs. I'm going to have to find my own email that describes for me the link I should be using to access my own labs, which I'm not sure I have. Let's see if I can remember what it is. Maybe I should just type in CompTIA CertMaster Labs and see if it will take me to the login page. I bet it will. Can it? It has the list of them. Of course it doesn't. I was so hoping, I was so thinking I was going to be able to plug that in and just click on it and have it go. That didn't work out for me. We'll try another one. Nope. I'll find the link though. We'll have it in here. So if another question in the chat room, you've been studying for the 601 since April, you have your voucher. Will watching the free videos be enough to fill any gaps? Well, maybe they would be. The problem you're going to run into is that just videos by themselves may not, but if you're combining that with a good book, with some labs, with some Q&A, they're a great resource to use. In fact, many people do that. Many people read their book or they'll attend a class, and then they tell me after reading the book and attending the class, they go to the videos and everything kind of gets gelled together. And I think that's a great way to do it. I agree. The CertMaster practice questions are very good as well. I don't have them on my Security Plus study recommendations. I really should, because I like those. No, I do too. I take it back. I just didn't scroll far enough. There they are. The official CertMaster practice questions. Of course, I have them on there. So not only do I have practice questions, I have the ones directly from CompTIA that are on there as well. By the way, if you get the CertMaster practice questions on my site, I give you my practice exams PDF for free. So you effectively get 3 more practice exams just by getting the CompTIA practice exams. Another one of those where you should get something extra for these and make that happen. So that's one I think can help you quite a bit to have those. This is the 601 exam, the first section of it. There is a number of challenging performance-based questions. The CertMaster practice has a number of those performance-based questions in it as well. So not only do I have some in my book, if you think, oh, I wish I had some more practice questions for performance-based, the CompTIA CertMaster practice is a good place to go for that. I think it would help as well. Not only if you get the practice, you get my practice exams. If you get the labs on my site, you also get my course notes. So and that's another kind of bonus if you get it from my site. If you buy a CompTIA product on my site, you don't just get the CompTIA product. I want you to get something else for free along with it. So I not only discount the CompTIA product, but you also can take that with you. Now, if you already have my practice exams or you already have my course notes, let me know, and I can discount the price even further for what you've already spent. So that's another bonus. So there's no reason we should have to pay full price for all of these. CompTIA has been nice enough to accept me as an official partner, and they say you can sell it for less. You don't have to sell it for full price. So I think it's a great opportunity to do that. So feel free to have a look. That's on my website under the recommended list of products. Let's go back to the phones. The 773 area code. Hi, caller. Which name are you calling from? Caller.
Hello, Professor.
Hello. Thanks for calling.
This is Joe.
How are you, Joe? Thanks for calling.
Thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure to look at your webcast.
And you as well.
Professor, my question. Thank you, sir. My question is, sir, these days, as you know, with the proliferation of ransomware and attacks, most people talk about learning Linux would make you a better troubleshooter in work and issues. How does Linux do things that Windows cannot do that with these commands that you were saying about, about security or checking problems with the network? What is a game that Linux plays in this issue that Windows cannot, and those commands cannot help? Or Linux does the same use of the same commands? Thank you very much for your answer, sir, and I hang up.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that call. There are a number of things with Linux and with Mac OS that are dramatically different than Windows. From a security perspective, I'll start with the one that we always mention. Other people are just not quite there yet with understanding the value of this, which is Windows has the market for desktops. There are far more Windows devices on the network than any of the other desktop devices that you will find. It's not quite the same on the server side, but certainly on the desktop side, the one people are using, the one people are bringing up their desktop, they're clicking on things, what they're doing, Windows. Because so many people are on Windows, it's a fantastic place for the hackers to go. If they want your personal information, they need to get into the operating system that you are using, and the operating system that the majority of people are using is Windows. So Windows is an enormous target. So to get around that, a number of security professionals have thought, well, why don't we use an operating system for our own desktop that's not the number one target? Let's use Linux or let's use Mac OS. Combined with that, Linux and Mac OS have a different legacy. They come from a different place. Linux has its own architecture that has been built through the years. Mac OS sort of started as Unix and now has it's very similar in architecture to Linux. There are a number of similarities. There are a number of differences, but you can look at those, at least at the command line and functionality perspective, as similar, because the same commands in Linux, there's usually a similar or same command on the Unix or Mac OS side. So the reason we move to those as security professionals is, number one, it's not the number one target, but perhaps more importantly, there are more security tools available in Linux, mostly because Microsoft has limited the functionality of Windows in the kernel. They've limited not in the usability of the operating system, but what you can do to manipulate it. And in security, we need to do a lot of manipulation. We need to capture information from the network and look at it. We need to, and usually when you're capturing from the network, we want to capture in what's called promiscuous mode, which means we're capturing everything on the network, whether it's something that is specifically targeted towards our computer or not. We also want to be able to perhaps send information out to the network, and we want to craft our own packets to be able to manipulate what other servers are doing. Windows has mechanisms in place that prevent you from doing that. It's a security mechanism. Microsoft doesn't want you to be able to manipulate packets. That makes Windows a much more juicier target. So they're minimizing that capability in Windows, limiting what you can do in Windows. That functionality is available in Linux. That functionality is available in Mac OS. So when you see a lot of security professionals walking around, you'll notice they're not using Windows. The last place I worked was Palo Alto Networks. I worked there as a senior systems engineer. Every systems engineer in the company had Mac OS as their desktop. Every single one of them. This started, of course, with 6 of us. Now there's probably hundreds of systems engineers at Palo Alto Networks, and probably the bulk of them are walking around with Mac OS. It is a secure operating system. It has some of those architectural advantages that Windows does not, to be able to prevent somebody from gaining access to the operating system. And there's a lot of security tools that you can run natively in Mac OS that you can't run natively in Windows. So that's the primary reason you see that. That doesn't mean that Mac OS is bulletproof. It does not mean that Linux is bulletproof. No operating system is bulletproof. No operating system can prevent every possible attack to it. But there are architectural differences between Unix and Linux that provide some additional functions that the legacy of Windows just does not have available to them. So that is, if I was going to focus on why are people using Linux, why are they using Mac OS, and should they, that's one of those reasons. Now, I will also say, and I gave an example of this in my course, I'm running Windows for other things. Some of the forensics tools that are listed in the exam objectives run in Windows. So you will find a mixture of these things. You will find some tools that run best in Linux, some tools that run best in Windows. And you'll have to make a decision on what your job role is and what you're doing to be able to understand which one works for you. Hopefully that gives you a perspective, Joe. I think that worked out very well. I think that that's exactly what he wanted. I know you didn't hear that, but I know that's exactly what he was thinking. But that's the reason we walked around with Mac OS on our systems at Palo Alto Networks, because it was relatively secure. We had a great IT team that supported both Windows and Mac OS. They were phenomenal. They supported Linux as well. It's one of those situations where we were a startup. Nobody knew us. Nobody believed the technology that we had. We had to build the best technology and use the best technology for what we were doing. For our systems engineers, it was Mac OS as our desktop. That was the best solution for what we were doing. We had VMs running in that. We had virtual firewalls running in that. We were doing API and REST communication inside of this. Lots there going on that Windows certainly would not have been able to do for us. So that's why whenever I talk about the best operating system for you, it depends on what you're doing. So that's the idea, is understanding the tools and what you want to be able to do to make all of those things happen. Let's go back to the phone lines and go to the 210 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Alex. I'm calling from San Antonio.
Hey, Alex.
I just got done attending ACI, and I've got conflicting reports of some say do the Intel, then do the Core 1, Core 2, then do security. But then I've had other people tell me do the security first, because if you pass the security, then whoever job you get for it, if they want the other qualifications, they know that you know it because you passed the security. What is your thoughts on that? Should I go step by step or just do the security first?
Both of those are valid in what some employers are looking for. The answer, of course, it depends on the employer. Some employers want you to have A+. They don't care about anything else. Some employers want you to have Security Plus. They don't care about anything else. There's some employers in San Antonio, you want to go work for Rackspace, they want you to have some Linux and Network Plus knowledge. So it depends on what the employer is looking for. The challenge that you're going to have, especially in environments where there's no one solid at least standard setting, is that's where it would be. You would really be focusing on what the employer wanted. I'll give you an example of this. If you go to Washington, D.C., you live in Virginia, Maryland, the D.C. area, most of the jobs in that area are jobs that want you to have Security Plus. That is the minimum that the government wants to have for Department of Defense type jobs and people that work with the Department of Defense. They don't care if you have A+, they don't care if you have Network Plus, you have to have Security Plus. And if you don't have it now, you need to get it very early on in your job. But if you go to San Antonio, Dallas, go to Los Angeles, go to Chicago, the requirements may be quite different. Employers may not care so much about Security Plus, and they really care if you have Network Plus or even A+. So it really depends. In my video on how to get a job in IT with no experience, I recommend that you create a spreadsheet that has a list of all of the jobs in your area that you might be qualified for. So it might be someone who has, you find a job at Company A, Company B, Company C, Company D, and Company E. They are all entry-level positions. Some of them are on a corporate help desk. Some are on a NOC. Some might be in a SOC, a Security Operations Center. But they're all entry-level. They would all be jobs that you would be qualified for, which for somebody who doesn't have an IT job right now, entry-level jobs is what you would be qualified for. For each one of those, I always recommend write down the requirements. Do these jobs require you to have a formal education? And if they list the type of formal education, what is that formal education? Do these jobs request that you have a certain certification? Write down what all those certifications are. Do they also ask for other types of skills? Do they want you to know about networking? Do they want you to know about firewalls? Do they want you to know about operating systems? Write those down as well. And at the end of that, you should be able to look at your spreadsheet and say, wow, 5 out of 6 employers in my area want me to have A+. Or you may find that 5 out of 6 employers in your area want you to have Security Plus, and that should really set your plans for what you want to do next. If everybody's asking for Security Plus, absolutely go out and get it. But if nobody's asking for Security Plus, that's probably not where you should be starting. You should be trying to match exactly what those employers want. You do not want to walk in with more credentials than what they are asking for, at least not significantly more credentials than what they are asking for, because an employer would see that you are, they're looking for someone who's A+ certified. You walk in with A+, you walk in with Security Plus, you also got your CCNA, and you present that, they're going to look at it and go, well, you are qualified, but you're probably overqualified. We think you're going to be bored in this job. Maybe this is not the best fit for you. You don't want to be in that position. People don't think too often about overqualification, but it is absolutely a real thing. And that's why I tell people when you're applying for a job, your resume, your cover letter, and everything you send to them should be customized for that job. If you think maybe you could put Network Plus on there and it's not a problem, put Network Plus. But if they're asking for A+, maybe you shouldn't put the CCNA on that resume right now. That people are in the chat room like, wait, does that happen? That absolutely happens. As a hiring manager, I was in a position where I needed to hire people, but I didn't want to hire somebody that would get on board. They would get trained. I would have them working for a month or two, and they would just get bored of it and then would leave. Well, I don't want that. I need to find somebody who is exactly where they can learn, where they understand what they need to do. There's still a little bit of room for them to grow in that position. So it really is an interesting balancing act that you have to do. You do not want to be turned down for being overqualified, but I don't know what people want that you're trying to put in positions for, that you want to put your resume in for. Make sure you have a very good understanding of your particular area of the world, that you've done some recon. You should be the expert in what's available for jobs in your particular area because you've already gone through this entire process. That's what I would recommend, Alex.
And how much getting the certification, does that make up for any lack of experience in the work at all?
I don't think it does. In my video, I try to get across that I think for a lot of people, they want to replace one of these things with another. A very common question I get is, I don't want to go get a 2-year degree. Can I just get a bunch of certifications? And that kind of replaces that. And the answer is no, because they don't. A formal degree doesn't replace certifications. Certifications and a formal degree don't replace practical experience. So you need to find a good balance between all of those. Sometimes if you don't have a formal degree, maybe you want to do a little more with some practical experience or with a little more certification. Maybe if you do have a formal degree, you want to balance it out a little more. But I would not consider them to be interchangeable from a hiring manager's perspective. I think each one of those adds a little bit of something to the overall picture, and I like to see a little bit of everything.
All right, thank you. Appreciate your videos, and I'm learning a lot, so appreciate it.
Thanks, Alex. Best of luck. It's something you really have to worry about when you're trying to get that job. In fact, in the chat room, people are even saying, and this is a good one from Steven with the $5 super chat. Thank you so much. I want to arm myself with as many certifications as possible. Not sure you do, but let's go with this. What do you think employers are really looking for? The best way to answer this question is to ask the employers. That is really the best way to do this. That process that I just really described is understanding what employers want in your particular geography. So in your geography, as I mentioned, if you're in the DC area, it's a completely different set of requirements than if you're in Los Angeles. Completely different. So I can't answer the question of what do I think employers are really looking for. Only the employers can ask that. And it varies depending on who you talk to. Some hiring managers care more about practical experience. Some hiring managers care more about your certifications. Maybe if it's an MSP, they have a particular number of certifications they have to maintain to have a particular relationship with a vendor. Like maybe they have a particular level of Microsoft a support that they provide, but only if a certain number of people in their company are Microsoft certified. This is a completely normal thing. So on their job description, they're going to say, we pretty much require that you have one of these Microsoft certifications. You might go to another company, maybe a manufacturing firm. They don't have to worry about that. So they might say, we want you to have A+ and Network Plus, and we're good. If you have a 2 or 4 year degree, that's okay, but we're really looking for this. It just depends. So if you're ever in a situation where you're reading through one of these job descriptions and you're not quite sure what people are asking for, I would recommend that you ask the employer. Very often, the person who works there is on LinkedIn. Maybe you're looking at the job description on LinkedIn Jobs. It's not a bad idea to send them a note saying, hi, I saw your job posting associated with this help desk position. And I noticed that you said it would be good to have a certification. Which ones are the most important for you? And if I don't have one, I will go out and get it and then send you my resume. You should start a relationship with them. You should start a conversation with them. Because later on, when you submit your resume, they're like, I know this name. Oh, I talked to this person over email. We talked over LinkedIn. So let me go through this person's resume and see, oh, look, they got the certification that I told them to get. That shows some insight. It shows a little bit of them wanting to get this job. Let's go talk to them. I think that's something you should think about. It's also good if in the meantime, you're documenting on LinkedIn the process of you doing this, where you can post just like to LinkedIn, just like you can post to Facebook. But instead of posting on Facebook, on Twitter, that you went and got donuts, you can post on LinkedIn. I just finished the first chapter of my Network Plus certification, and I learned these things. That's all you have to put. And then you do that every week. And then when the person who you're looking at to hire you goes back and looked at your LinkedIn, they can see the path you went through and the things that you did. It wasn't just something you put in your resume. They can actually see what you did and the path you took to get there. I think being able to document some of these technical things we do on LinkedIn might be another valuable element to add to my list of how to get a job in IT elements. I think it'd be extremely useful to have that there. Let's go back to the phones. Down to South Florida, 954 area code. Hi, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
How you doing, Professor Messer? This is Kevin from Pembroke Pines.
Kevin from Pines Boulevard out in Silver Lakes. How are you, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Actually, I'm not really doing fine. I was unfortunately stricken with COVID.
Oh, no.
And I'm in quarantine right now, and lo and behold, I see one of your telecasts right now. That's why I'm in quarantine right now, and just recuperating. So,
well, you're sounding great. I hope things are going well, and it's a very mild case of it.
Yeah, it caught me by surprise. It definitely caught me by surprise.
It's one of those.
Well, the main thing I want to ask you.
It seems to be going around.
I want to ask you. Yeah, I want to ask you a couple of months ago is that what is your thoughts about all these companies now doing all these college reimbursement programs, like for colleges or even certifications?
This is
like Home Depot or.
Oh yeah, Home Depot, Disney, and a bunch of other organizations have recently gotten in the news for not only college reimbursement. They're trying to find any way they can to get talent. Even organizations, since we're both in Florida, I looked over down at Disney. Disney is giving $1,000 job bonus for people to come in and work in the housekeeping section for their hotels. It's difficult to get people hired. And that's really the problem that we're having in the industry and elsewhere, is that we've all been out of work. We're all trying to get back to work now. And we're finding that other companies people are moving around a lot lately. They have left organization. Maybe they worked in California and they've realized I want to live somewhere else. They moved to Florida and now they need a job in Florida. But there's a lot of open positions out there and a lot of jobs to choose from. And employers want to grab those people. But this is a seller's market, as they say. It's somebody who is fully qualified. It is the job seekers market right now because there are a lot of open positions. So employers want you to come work for them. They need to fill that spot. They need that body with that knowledge and the talent that you have, and they want to bring it in-house, and they need some way to entice you. No, you need to come work here. We have these benefits, and if you work here now, we will pay for your college. If you ever wanted to get that 2 or 4 year degree, we'll bring you in and we'll pay for that. All you have to do is work here. That's fantastic. That's a great thing. And I think a lot of people are saying, really? Maybe I should do that. And now we can start looking at the different positions available and go down those lines. Not every vertical, not every set of jobs is lucky enough to be in that position right now, but there are certainly a number of jobs in IT where we need skilled people. So that is one of those examples, especially, and we're seeing it even in Florida, where the better they can give you a little bit more honey, maybe they'll get some more bees to come over and they can fill those positions.
Yeah, 'cause I know when I was working for Comcast Business that they not only would they're telling us that they'll pay for our college or whatever, but there's also mentioned about any certifications like Cisco or even especially CompTIA or even CISSP, and they were mentioned about we'll pay for your certification and reimburse you. And I was wondering about why is it that they really pushing that so heavily. I was wondering about that.
That is exactly why. And as I tell people that are in these positions working for these companies, if there is a 401k that the company contributes to in a matching form, you should be sure you're contributing to that and going to the maximum matching number for the 401k because they're giving you free money. Now, on the back end, they get a tax benefit for doing that, but you're now getting every bit you put in, they're matching that. You should absolutely be contributing to a 401k for your retirement because it is free. The other piece is if they are offering certification reimbursement, a reimbursement for college classes or a college degree, take advantage of that too. All of those are fantastic. The companies get a tax benefit for doing that. But they also get a benefit that you're now more knowledgeable. You're now someone who is learning more with the company. They've enabled you to be able to do your job even better. They understand that it also enables you to perhaps move somewhere else and move up the ladder. But in a large organization like Comcast Business, hopefully they can get you to move up the ladder within their own organization. They're taking a bet that giving you these skills will not have you leave the organization. But they also know that happens as well. You just have to be able to do it. So make sure that if that is something for anyone listening, if your company provides that, make sure you take advantage of it. They would like you to take advantage of it too, not only for their own personal reasons and the tax break they get, but they know you're going to get something out of the deal too.
Yeah, and I noticed that I received an email from CompTIA about their new edition of the Network Plus. And I want to ask you, how different is the new edition of the Network Plus from the old edition of, I think, with a 007? Like, how different? I mean, I already have it. I was just wondering because I received an email about that.
When I first started going through the differences between these, because the first thing I do when I get a set of exam objectives is I list out all of the objectives and I compare the different certification versions to each other. For example, I mentioned earlier in the study group that the newest Security Plus SY0-601 was dramatically different that more than half of the material on the 601 is brand new. Roughly half is brand new. I thought on the latest Network Plus that there would not be as dramatic a change as Security Plus. And to some degree, I was correct. In some degree, I was wrong. When I put together all of the objectives and the way they worked, what I found was that if you were to count up all of the objectives for the N10-007, there are 499 objectives on the N10-007, effectively 500 objectives. Not an enormous certification. It pretty much matches a Core 1 or a Core 2 in the total number of objectives. A little bit higher, but effectively 500. What they did on the N10-008 is that number is increased slightly to 588 objectives. So a little bit more, but I guess in the big scheme of things, what's another 89 objectives? It's another 100 to add to the list. But they got rid of a lot of old stuff and they put in 235 new topics in those 588, which means that effectively 40% of the N10-008 is brand new content. That's a pretty significant number. And for somebody who has to update their certification videos, the more they change, the more I have to create from scratch. So 40% was a pretty big number. But this also means that if you have older study materials, like you have a book for the N10-007, you really can't use that book for the N10-008. There's too much missing. So if you were planning to take the N10-008, you're probably going to have to wait about a month or two for all these books to finally hit the market and finally have something you could study from, because there's not a lot out right now because it's so different than the 007.
Yeah. Well, I already, like I said, I already have it, and I also have the Security Plus as well, too. So that may be a security infrastructure specialist. So I already have all this. I was just wondering because I received an email from CompTIA saying about that new exam. I was wondering about that.
Yep. So, I think it's a very good exam. I think there were good changes they did. I think the things that are in the exam are spot on. They did a very good job at determining what networking topics should go into this. And I think if you're planning, you're not one of those people, but if other people listening are planning to get their Network Plus and they're just starting the study process, the N10-008 is one you could consider. There's just not a lot of books out right now. There's not a lot of materials out right now. The N10-007 may still be a good one to study from because it doesn't retire until the end of June.
Well, it was nice hearing from you, Professor Messer, and thank you for your time.
Kevin, I'm sorry to hear about you with the COVID, but it sounds like you sound good. We wish you the best. We hope you get well very soon.
I hope so. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for calling. It's one of those, I think, inevitabilities for all of us. It's at some point we're all going to get this, and we'll all have to rid ourselves of it. It's just a matter of it finally making the rounds, as they say. Back in the day, they're making the rounds. Everybody seems to have it, kind of scenario. We'll have to see how that goes. This is one where I think here in Florida, we're on the down curve. We're well on the downward slide of this. So now it's a point of figuring out, what do we do next? These jobs are ramping up. The networks are growing. The projects are back. People need to get things done. Technology is important. And it's now ramping up even again. How can we position ourselves for these technology jobs that are here? We're seeing, in Florida anyway, we're seeing tons of growth in Central Florida and in South Florida. All of these companies are going to need technologists. So this is what you will be able to use to be a technologist with these. And I think that once you get the skills that A+, Network Plus, Security Plus, Microsoft, Cisco, and these other companies have, you will be well prepared to get those jobs and perhaps more importantly, grow with those companies. IT is a place where it's just an upward rocket ship. And how quickly you move in IT and what you do in IT is completely up to you. There are jobs everywhere doing all sorts of different things. If you like to travel, there's an IT job for you. If you like to stay at home, there's an IT job for you. If you like to be in a data center, there is an IT job for you. If you'd like to work with operating systems, databases, web systems, the cloud, security, there's all kinds of jobs available for you. Hundreds and thousands of positions doing all sorts of interesting things, and it's never a dull moment. If you're someone who's really looking to get a career and move into a career that can take you as high as you would like to go, making multiple six figures a year or even higher in some cases, IT is a great place. So I would always recommend to people, find out what you want to do next, find the jobs that are out there for you, position yourself for those jobs, and go get them. Because at that point, it's going to be you on your own rocket ship, going very quickly, finding amazing things available to you. And it's never a dull moment. It's something I have always enjoyed in this career, is knowing that at any point I can go do anything with technology, and it's something that you can do as well. Well, this brings us to the end of another Security Plus Study Group. Thank you for being here. Thanks for dealing with all of the changing of schedules and the timing. Make sure you always check the calendar on the website at professormesser.com/calendar. Who knows what next month will bring. Hopefully we'll be able to keep our times and our dates, but these things change all the time. And we're so happy and so pleased that you're able to adjust your schedule as well to meet with us and do the Q&A in the first hour, and we love to get your calls in the second hour as well. Chat room, thank you for being here. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your feedback, and thank you for joining us. If you're watching on the replay, we appreciate you watching. Click that thumbs up. Click the bell if you'd like to subscribe. We'd love to have you there as well. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the Security Plus Study Group.